I never meant to notice her the way I did. It started the way most things in my life start, quietly, in the middle of a routine no one else would think twice about. Saturday mornings, the laundromat down the street. Fluorescent lights humming, dryers rattling, the smell of detergent clinging to the air. That was the rhythm. Wash, wait, fold, leave. And then one morning, she was there. She wasn't doing anything special, just sitting in one of those cracked plastic chairs, a paperback balanced on her knee, hair pulled back like she didn't care if it looked perfect. But I noticed the way her eyes didn't track the words on the page. She was somewhere else, far off, and for reasons I didn't understand, I couldn't look away. I'd seen her before, of course. She was my friend Daniel's mom. A face I'd passed at backyard barbecues and birthday dinners. Always polite. Always smiling with that distant kind of warmth adults wear when they're half distracted. But in that laundromat light, without anyone else around, she didn't look like somebody's mom. She looked tired. Human. When our eyes finally met, it wasn't dramatic. Just a flicker, like catching someone's reflection in glass. I gave a small nod. She gave one back, almost like she regretted being caught in the act of existing. I thought that would be the end of it. But then, when I went to move my clothes into the dryer, I heard her voice. Those machines eat quarters, you know. Always take 2 extra. It was nothing, really. Just neighborly advice. But the way she said it, low, careful, like she was sharing a secret, lodged itself somewhere in me. I laughed, nervous, dropping a coin. Good to know. Guess I should have brought more ammo. Her mouth tilted into something that wasn't quite a smile, but close. She closed her book, set it in her lap, and for a second, I swear, she was studying me. The silence stretched. I found myself folding and refolding the same t-shirt just to keep my hands busy. She noticed. Her eyes flicked to my clumsy fingers, then back up, and there was this pause, like she was about to say something else but decided against it. I should have left it there. I should have kept to my corner. But loneliness has a way of making you braver in the smallest, strangest ways. You come here a lot? I asked, instantly regretting how much it sounded like a bad pickup line. She chuckled once, quietly. Not enough to be recognized. Until now, I guess. Something about the way she said that stuck with me the rest of the morning. By the time my clothes were done, she was already gone. No goodbye, no wave. Just an empty chair, her paperback still resting on the seat as if she'd left it behind on purpose. I stood there for too long, staring at it, wondering if I should pick it up. In the end, I didn't. I just carried my laundry home, folded wrong, a damp shirt clinging to my arm where I'd held it too close. That night, while scrolling half-heartedly through my phone, I noticed a new message. Unknown number. Just 5 words. This stays between us. I read it 3 times before it sank in who it had to be. And suddenly, the hum of dryers and the tilt of her almost smile came back, sharper than they had felt in the moment. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with that text. But I knew one thing. I'd never forget it that I didn't answer her text right away. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was because I read it so many times I stopped believing it was real. This stays between us. What was this? A look? A conversation about quarters? A silence that lasted 2 seconds longer than normal? Still, when I saw her again, the words wouldn't leave my head. It was a week later. Daniel had invited me over to study for an exam. I was halfway through flipping through his notes at the kitchen table when she walked in, carrying a mug of tea. She didn't flinch when she saw me, but something in her shoulders tightened, like she'd braced herself before stepping into the room. "Hey," I said, a little too casual. She nodded, setting her mug down. "You're here late." Daniel grunted something from his room about cramming, but my focus stayed on her. She wasn't dressed up, just jeans and a soft sweater, sleeves pushed up. But she had this way of making even simple clothes feel deliberate, like the world bent to notice her. When Daniel disappeared to take a call, it was just us in the kitchen. She reached for her tea. I noticed her hand lingered on the rim of the mug, like she needed the warmth. "You left your book at the laundromat," I blurted. Her eyes flicked up, startled, then softened. "I know. I went back for it. Figured maybe you'd seen it." "I thought about picking it up," I admitted. "Didn't. Felt like it wasn't mine to touch." For a second, the silence grew heavy. She tilted her head, studying me again like she had before. Then she said, almost under her breath, "That's more respect than most people show me lately." I don't know why she said it. Maybe she regretted it as soon as it left her mouth. But it cracked something. I wanted to ask, why, who, what happened? But I didn't. Instead, I said the safest thing I could. "I like the cover. Blue. Simple." She smiled, faintly, almost like it hurt. It was a gift. From someone I don't talk to anymore. The air between us shifted. Not romantic, not yet. Just raw. Two people acknowledging a loneliness without naming it. Daniel returned before either of us could say more, but the rest of the night, her words stayed with me. More respect than most people show me. 2 nights later, I saw her again. This time not at her house, not at the laundromat, but outside, struggling with a bag of groceries. I offered to carry it up the stairs. She hesitated, then let me. "Thanks," she said when we reached the landing. She fumbled with her keys. "No problem," I replied, setting the bag by her door. But I didn't move away. Something about the dim hallway light, the smell of oranges from the bag, the way she brushed a strand of hair from her face, it pinned me there. "You know," she said suddenly, not looking at me, "when I was your age, I thought 30 was old. Now, I can't believe I've already passed 40. Her voice cracked the slightest bit. I looked at her, not knowing what to say. "You don't seem old," I managed, though it sounded weak even to me. She let out a small laugh, shaking her head. "That's kind of you. But trust me, 45 feels very seen." There was something behind that word, seen. I caught it, held on to it. My chest tightened. We stood there in silence, the bag of groceries between us like a border neither of us wanted to cross. I kept imagining things I shouldn't, her hand brushing mine, her leaning closer. Scenarios that felt both impossible and dangerously possible. She reached down, pulled out an orange, and held it out. "Here. For helping." I took it, fingers grazing hers. Barely a second of contact, but it felt heavier than it should have. "Thanks," I said. Her eyes met mine then, steady, searching, the kind of look that makes you forget the air between breaths. It didn't last long. She looked away, turned her key, and slipped inside. The door closed softly. I stood there with the orange in my hand, heart racing, wondering why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because, for the first time in a long while, it felt like someone finally saw me. The orange stayed on my desk for 3 days. I didn't need it. Couldn't. Every time I looked at it, I remembered the brush of her fingers against mine. When I finally saw her again, it was raining. Not a storm, just a steady drizzle, enough to make the pavement shine. I was leaving the library when I spotted her under the awning, clutching a paper bag to her chest. She glanced up, caught me, and there it was again. That pause, that half-smile that never seemed to fully land. "You walk in this?" I asked, gesturing at the rain. "Didn't think it'd be this bad," she said. She adjusted the bag, careful not to let it tear. "Daniel was supposed to pick me up, but he forgot." Her voice was light, but there was something underneath. A small sting. "Let me," I said, reaching for the bag. Too quick. My hand almost touched hers before she shifted back. A hesitation, sharp and brief. She handed it over anyway. We stood there, side by side, the rain dripping just inches away. Neither of us moved. "You'll get wet," she murmured. "Doesn't matter." Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. Silence stretched, filled only by rain tapping the roof above us. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stalled in my throat. And then, "Hey," Daniel's voice. He jogged across the lot, jacket pulled over his head. Relief washed over her face so quickly it almost hurt to watch. She stepped back, just slightly, as if remembering where she was, who she was. "You found him," I said, quieter than I meant to. She nodded, but her gaze lingered on me a beat too long before shifting. "Daniel reached us, panting. Sorry, Mom. Traffic was worse than I thought." She handed me the bag back, her hand brushing mine for the briefest second. Deliberate? Accidental? I couldn't tell, but it stayed burning in my palm long after Daniel took the groceries. Later that week, I passed her door in the hallway. She was kneeling by the mat, picking up scattered mail. A small envelope slipped from her hands. I bent to grab it. Our fingers touched again, this time unmistakably. We froze. Her breath caught, lips parting like she wanted to speak. So close. The quiet was louder than any sound. I felt the urge rising, stupid and reckless, to lean in, to say something I couldn't take back. But then she pulled her hand away, sharp, like she'd been burned. "Thank you," she whispered, not looking at me. Her door clicked shut. I stood there, the envelope still warm from her touch, heart hammering against my ribs. We hadn't crossed the line. Not yet. But for the first time, I knew how close we were. It was late afternoon when I saw her sitting alone on the park bench. Not the busy part of the park, just the quiet stretch near the old fountain no one used anymore. She had her hands folded in her lap, jacket pulled tight, staring at the cracked stone like it held answers. I almost walked past. Should have. But she noticed me first. "You walk a lot," she said, voice light but frayed at the edges. "Clears my head," I said. Then, after a pause, "Mind if I?" She gestured to the space beside her. I sat. The bench creaked under our weight. For a while, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of wind through brittle leaves, a dog barking in the distance. Her hand fiddled with the edge of her sleeve, tugging the thread loose. Finally, she said, "Daniel talks about you, you know. Says you're one of the only people he trusts." I swallowed. "He's a good friend." She gave a small nod. "He is." Her voice softened. "Which makes this complicated." The words hung there, heavy, uninvited. My chest tightened. I wanted to ask what this meant. Laundromat silences, oranges in hallways, messages that read like secrets. But I stayed quiet. "I shouldn't," she trailed off, shaking her head. "I shouldn't linger like this." "Like what?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her eyes met mine then, steady, unflinching. There was no smile to soften it this time. Just something raw, almost pained. "Like someone who's forgotten the rules," she whispered. The air between us shifted. My pulse picked up, louder than the rustling leaves. I thought about the way she pulled back in the hallway, the way she looked relieved when Daniel showed up in the ring. Always retreating, always remembering the boundary. But sitting there now, she wasn't retreating. I let the silence stretch until I couldn't take it anymore. "You think I don't notice? The way you look at me? The way you—" My voice faltered. "It's not just me, is it?" She inhaled sharply, but didn't look away. Her fingers stilled against the frayed sleeve. For a moment, I thought she would deny it. Pretend I'd imagined everything. That would have been easier. Safer. Instead, she said, barely above a whisper, "It scares me." I felt the words sink into me, heavy and electric. "What does?" I asked. Her laugh was small, bitter. "How easy it is. Sitting here, talking to you, forgetting I'm supposed to know better." Something inside me twisted. Maybe knowing better isn't the same as feeling better. She closed her eyes for a moment, like the sentence landed too close. When she opened them again, her gaze was softer, almost pleading. "You're young," she said. "You don't understand what this could mean." I wanted to argue, to tell her age didn't matter, that what I felt wasn't some passing mistake. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to steady myself. "I understand enough to know I'll remember this. Whatever this is. Even if it stops here." Her hand twitched beside me, like she almost reached out but stopped herself. I saw the restraint in her shoulders, the guilt tangled with longing. It mirrored my own. We sat like that, close but not touching, words half spoken, the weight of something unsaid pressing down harder than anything we could admit. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "What are we doing?" The question hung there, suspended in the thinning light. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was, I didn't know either. After the bench, I expected something to shift between us. Not a declaration, not anything big, just more. A glance held longer. A word meant differently. Something. But the opposite happened. For a week, she was gone. Or maybe she wasn't gone. I just didn't see her. Her blinds stayed shut, her door quiet. No groceries carried in, no faint sound of TV seeping through the thin apartment walls. She vanished into silence, and I didn't know if I'd imagined her entirely. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. People get busy. People keep to themselves. But it gnawed at me, because after everything, laundromat, oranges, the park bench, it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like retreat. And then, On the 8th day, I saw her. I was coming back from class, rain still drying on my jacket, when her door opened. She stepped out, dressed better than I'd ever seen her. Hair smooth, lipstick neat, the kind of care you take when you're meeting someone who still matters. She locked her door and turned, nearly bumping into me. "Oh," she said. A small pause. "You're here." I nodded, heart pounding too fast for such a simple encounter. "Yeah." She adjusted the strap of her bag, eyes darting to the stairwell. "I'm heading out." "To see someone?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Her eyes flicked back to mine. For a second, I thought she'd lie. But instead, she gave a half-smile. "An old friend." Something in my chest clenched. I wanted to ask if old friend meant ex-husband, if this was the baggage she'd never named. But I didn't. I just nodded, trying to make it look casual. "Have a good night," she said softly, and then she was gone. That night, I couldn't focus. The image of her, dressed for someone else, burned through everything I did. I told myself I had no claim, no right to feel anything. But logic didn't stop the jealousy that crept in, slow and ugly. I almost texted her. I typed, "Did you get home safe?" Then deleted it. Typed again, "Do you want to talk?" Deleted that too. Instead, I sat in the dark with my phone glowing in my hand, waiting for a message that never came. The next time I saw her, she was back in her usual sweater, hair tied loosely, no lipstick. She was carrying groceries again. Normal. Too normal. I offered to help. She shook her head. "I've got it." The distance in her voice stung worse than if she'd slammed the door. "Everything okay?" I asked carefully. She forced a smile. "Everything's fine." It wasn't. I knew it wasn't. But she didn't let me in. I watched her disappear behind her door, a barrier that suddenly felt thicker than walls. Days blurred. I stopped going to the laundromat, stopped walking the park path where we'd sat. If she was pulling back, maybe I should too. Maybe it was safer that way. But at night, I still caught myself listening for her footsteps in the hall. Once, I heard them, soft, hesitating. They stopped outside my door. I froze, breath held. But then they moved on, retreating to her apartment. No knock. No word. The next morning, I left for class earlier than usual. She was at her mailbox, flipping through letters. We locked eyes for a moment. She looked like she might speak. I waited. She didn't. I walked past, pretending it didn't matter. Pretending the silence wasn't louder than anything she could have said. That night, I typed a message. "Do you regret it?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. My chest ached with everything unsaid. I didn't send it. I put the phone down, screen dimming to black, the question dissolving into silence. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence that it happened in the most ordinary place. The kitchen. Daniel had gone out for the evening, leaving me alone at his table with my laptop open, half working on an assignment. I heard the faint sound of a cupboard door closing, the shuffle of bare feet. She must not have realized I was still there. When she stepped into the kitchen, she froze. For a moment, it was like seeing a stranger, her hair down, sweater loose, a glass of water in her hand. "Oh," she said, catching her breath. "I thought you'd left." "I was just finishing up," I murmured, closing the laptop. But neither of us moved. She set her glass on the counter, fingers lingering on the rim. "It feels like we keep running into each other." I swallowed. "We do." Her eyes flicked to mine, quick, searching. Then she looked away. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I should have let it go. Should have grabbed my bag and left. But something inside me gave way. Maybe the weak of her distance. Maybe the way she stood there like she wanted to say something and couldn't. "Are you avoiding me?" I asked. Her hand stilled on the counter. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, tired. Maybe I'm avoiding myself." That cut deeper than I expected. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her. "You don't have to do that with me." She let out a shaky laugh. "Don't I? You're 20. I'm twice that. And not just older. Different. Divorce papers, bills, a son who thinks I've got it all figured out. You don't want that weight." I stood slowly, not sure why. Maybe because sitting felt too passive for the ache in her voice. "I want you," I said before I could stop myself. It wasn't loud, just steady, honest. Her breath caught. She pressed a hand to her temple, like the words physically struck her. Don't say that. You don't know what you're saying. I do, I said. My chest burned. And if you don't feel the same, just tell me. I'll leave. But don't act like none of this happened. Like I imagined all of it. The words hung there, raw. She closed her eyes. For a long moment, she said nothing. The kitchen felt too small, the silence too heavy. When she opened them again, her gaze locked onto mine. There was no denial, no retreat, just a fragile kind of surrender. You didn't imagine it, she whispered. It felt like the air shifted, like the ground under me gave just enough for me to breathe again. She stepped closer, slowly, like she was testing each inch of space between us. Her hand brushed the table as if to steady herself. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of you. Of how easy this feels. How much I don't want to stop. I swallowed hard. My hands itched to reach for her, but I stayed still, afraid one wrong move would shatter it all. Then don't stop, I whispered. Her lips parted, breath shallow. She looked at me like she was searching for a reason not to. The silence stretched. Then she reached out, fingertips brushing the back of my hand. Just barely there, a whisper of contact. But it was enough. I turned my palm up, let her settle her hand into mine. Warm, fragile, real. We didn't kiss. We didn't make promises. She just looked at me, eyes wet but steady, and said the simplest thing. Okay. And somehow, that one word carried more weight than anything else could. Life didn't change overnight. It never does. There were no announcements, no sudden leaps into something we couldn't name. Just smaller shifts, almost invisible at first. I still saw her in the hallway, arms full of groceries, hair pulled back like always. But now, when our hands brushed, she didn't pull away. She let it linger. I still visited Daniel, still sat at that same kitchen table. But sometimes, after he went out, she'd bring me tea. Quietly, as if it were nothing. The steam curled between us, the silence warmer than it used to be. It wasn't simple. Some days she retreated, her guard up. Some days I did, second-guessing myself, wondering if I was pushing her into a story she didn't want. But we kept circling back, like the pull of something steady, inevitable. One morning, months later, I was walking through the park. Same bench, same cracked fountain. She was already there, hands folded in her lap, waiting. You're late, she teased when I sat down. I glanced at my watch. 8:47 a.m., exactly the same time I'd noticed her first message months ago. I didn't tell her that. Some things feel better kept quiet. She handed me a thermos. Tea. Figured you'd forgotten breakfast. I unscrewed the lid, let the warmth seep into my hands. You always know. Her smile was small, almost shy. Not always. We sat like that for a while, the same silence as before, but it didn't ache anymore. It felt earned. Daniel never asked questions. Maybe he didn't notice. Maybe he didn't want to. We never crossed a line in front of him. We never needed to. This wasn't about showing the world anything. It was about surviving the small spaces where loneliness had once settled. I thought back to the laundromat, to the way she'd said take 2 extra quarters like it was a secret, to the orange she'd pressed into my hand, to the envelope I'd picked up from the floor. Little fragments, all meaningless on their own. Together, they'd built something that felt impossible to explain. Sometimes she'd catch me staring at her hands, the way they folded laundry, the way they traced the rim of her mug. She'd tilt her head, amused. What, she'd ask. Nothing, I'd say, shaking my head. But the truth was, I was memorizing it. The ordinary gestures that had become extraordinary because they were hers. We never said love. Not in so many words. Maybe we didn't have to. The night she finally let me stay, just on the couch, nothing more, she came back into the room with 2 mugs. 1 tea, 1 black coffee. She set them down and said, almost to herself, this stays between us. I smiled, remembering. Laundromat hum, quarters, the very first thread of all this. And when I met her eyes across the table, she smiled back. Not guarded, not hesitant, just here. Looking back now, I don't think of the near misses or the silences. I think of that moment on the park bench, thermos in my hands, her voice cutting through the quiet. You're late. It still makes me smile. Because it wasn't about the words at all. It was about the fact that she was waiting. that she always had been in her own way. And that, finally, I wasn't just imagining it.